At 2:17 in the morning, every lamp in the Rourke house was burning. 7 exhausted men sat around the kitchen table while wind scraped dust against the windows. Wiley Rourke had just returned from chasing 3 horses someone had released from the western paddock. Tolliver hadn't slept more than 2 hours together in weeks. Ansel stared at an account book until the numbers blurred. Their father, Ephraim, stood over a ranch map. North Gate was open again, Calder said. I checked that latch myself, Witt replied. Jory rubbed both hands over his face. Then perhaps the gate has developed ambitions. Nobody laughed. For months earlier, they would have. Then came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. 7 heads turned. Nobody visited Rourke Ranch after midnight. Ephraim opened the door. A large woman stood outside beside a damaged freight wagon. Rain darkened her traveling cloak. She was perhaps 38, full-figured, with copper-brown hair plastered against a round, striking face. Temperance Bell, she introduced herself. My axle failed about half a mile east. Ephraim stepped aside. You'll freeze standing there. She entered, and immediately stopped. Mud covered the floor near the doorway. Among 7 sets of boot marks was a horseshoe impression. Temperance crouched. Which one of you owns a horse with a bar shoe on the left hind? Silence. None, Tolliver answered. Temperance studied the print again. Then you've got a problem. Morning did nothing to improve the Rourkes. It merely made their exhaustion easier to see. Temperance learned why over breakfast. For months, strange incidents had plagued the ranch. Gates opened. Harness disappeared. Feed sacks were cut. Lanterns appeared along distant fences. Twice someone had started small fires. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough trouble to ensure somebody remained awake every night. Temperance listened without interrupting. Later, she found Calder repairing a barn latch. Broken? 3rd time. She examined it. That wasn't broken. Calder frowned. She pointed to faint marks along the metal. Someone filed it. By noon, she had found something else. Ansel sat surrounded by ledgers. You recorded this delivery twice. His expression hardened. I know my accounts. I'm sure you do when you've slept. He checked. She was right. Ansel didn't appreciate that. You're here because your wagon broke, Mrs. Bell. Correct. Not to investigate us. Temperance closed the ledger. Then prove me wrong. You'll sleep better. Jory nearly choked trying not to laugh. By evening, Temperance had compared 4 months of incidents against Ansel's ranch calendar. Then she called everyone to the table. Your trouble isn't random. She pointed at several dates. A gate opened before a horse auction. Feed was ruined before a cattle shipment. Harness disappeared before a loan payment required livestock to reach town. Each disturbance happened when exhaustion could cost the Rourkes money. Someone isn't trying to destroy this ranch, Temperance said. Ephraim studied her. They're trying to wear us down. Exactly. Her solution sounded insane. Tonight, everyone sleeps. 6 brothers protested simultaneously. Temperance waited. You've spent 4 months behaving exactly as whoever is doing this expects. She looked at Ephraim. Try disappointing them. They left lanterns burning behind bedroom curtains. Boots remained outside doors. Ephraim's coat hung where anyone watching the ranch could see it. Then the house went silent. Temperance waited in darkness. At 1:40, hoofbeats approached. A rider stopped beyond the cottonwoods. But he didn't come closer. Instead, a shadow emerged from the Rourke bunkhouse. Someone already inside the ranch walked out to meet him. Temperance's stomach tightened. The enemy wasn't only outside their fence. Temperance told Ephraim before sunrise. His first instinct was confrontation. She stopped him. Accuse the wrong man, and the right one disappears. What do you suggest? A lie. That afternoon, Ansel deliberately entered a false shipment into the ranch ledger. 12 valuable breeding mares, supposedly leaving Friday night. Only Ephraim, Ansel, and Temperance knew it was fabricated. Temperance also marked selected feed sacks with tiny charcoal lines. Then they waited. 2 days later, Sabine Lockett, the town postmistress, brought surprising news. A cattle buyer had begun asking questions about 12 Rourke mares. Ansel went still. There are no 12 mares. Temperance nodded. Exactly. Their false information had escaped the ranch. Wiley's skepticism finally disappeared. Somebody's selling what they hear here. And somebody's paying, Temperance replied. Now they needed to know why. Sabine's records provided the next break. The buyer asking about the non-existent horses represented a cattle concern purchasing distressed ranches throughout the county. Ephraim recognized 3 names immediately. All refused to sell. And afterward, Temperance asked, Ephraim thought. One ranch suffered repeated livestock losses. Another missed crucial deliveries. A third owner sold after months of unexplained equipment damage. Temperance leaned back. There it is. They weren't trying to steal Rourke cattle. They wanted Rourke land. Exhaust the family. Damage income. Create mistakes. Make Ephraim desperate. Then arrive with an offer when selling felt easier than surviving. One name connected several transactions. Leander Say, a former Rourke employee. Ephraim's face hardened. He knows our schedules. Our gates, Wiley added. Our workers, said Ansel. Temperance looked toward the 6 exhausted brothers. And he knows exactly how long men can function without sleep. For months, the Rourkes believed they were defending their ranch from random trouble. Now they understood the truth. Someone had been conducting a campaign, and for the first time, the Rourkes were no longer reacting to it. They were about to set the trap themselves. The strangest sound at Rourke Ranch was silence. At 8 in the morning, Whit still hadn't appeared downstairs. Jory noticed first. Where's Whit? For months, those words would have sent all 6 brothers running. Jory reached the bedroom and pushed open the door, then stopped. Whit was asleep. Not injured. Not sick. Simply asleep so deeply that morning sunlight covered half his bed without waking him. Jory quietly closed the door. Let him sleep. By noon, something almost forgotten returned to the house. Laughter. Temperance had reorganized the watches so no man guarded the ranch alone and no brother sacrificed an entire night's rest. Small markers on gates revealed tampering without requiring constant patrols. That evening Ephraim found her outside with coffee. You gave my son something I couldn't. Temperance looked across the peaceful yard. No. She handed him the second cup. I convinced you that protecting them and trusting them aren't opposites. For once, Ephraim had no answer. And Temperance discovered she rather enjoyed accomplishing that. Their opportunity came 3 nights later. Ansel deliberately entered another false transaction into the ledger. 6 expensive breeding horses. Midnight transfer. Southgate. This time Sheriff Harlan Quill and 2 trusted ranchers waited beyond the cottonwoods. The Rourkes did something far harder. They went to bed. At 11:58, the Southgate moved. A ranch worker named Deke Orson slipped outside and raised a shaded lantern. A rider emerged. Sheriff Quill stepped from behind the trees. Evening, gentlemen. Deke ran 3 steps before Wiley blocked his path. Nobody drew a weapon. Nobody needed to. Inside Deke's bunk chest, they later discovered payment receipts, coded instructions, and correspondence linking Leander Say to a cattle concern purchasing distressed properties throughout the county. The sabotage hadn't targeted only Rourke Ranch. 5 neighboring families had suffered similar campaigns. Equipment failures, missing cattle, destroyed feed, then convenient offers to purchase their land. Ephraim stared at the documents. They weren't buying failing ranches. Temperance shook her head. They were creating them. The investigation should have ended there. Instead, Calder called Temperance into the workshop. Her wagon was finally repaired. But he wasn't smiling. Your axle didn't fail. He showed her a narrow groove. Someone had deliberately weakened it. Temperance went pale. Before losing her freight station, she'd transported sealed correspondence for several businessmen. One package had carried the same cattle concerns mark. She had unknowingly carried evidence between men involved in the scheme. Her arrival at Rourke Ranch had been coincidence. Her breakdown had not. Ephraim immediately said, "You're staying here." Temperance's eyes narrowed. That sounded dangerously like an order. It was supposed to sound like protection. I'm 38, Ephraim. I've buried a husband, lost a business, and crossed half this territory alone. You may stand beside me. You don't get to stand in front of me. For several seconds, he stared. Then the corner of his mouth lifted. Beside you, then. That was the moment Temperance Bell truly began falling in love with him. Not because he protected her. Because when challenged, he listened. Within weeks, arrests and land fraud investigations spread across the territory. The ranch returned to normal, which meant Temperance's reason for remaining was gone. One morning her repaired wagon stood outside. Wiley offered her permanent work managing ranch logistics. Ansel handed her the accounting system they'd redesigned together. Jory leaned against the wagon. Who exactly is supposed to tell me when I'm being an idiot? Experience. That seems unnecessarily painful. Calder proudly showed her the reinforced axle. Whit said nothing. He simply placed a spare ranch key into her palm. Temperance nearly cried. Then Ephraim appeared. The sons suddenly discovered urgent work elsewhere. Temperance looked at him. Your boys don't need me anymore. No. The answer hurt more than she'd expected. Ephraim stepped closer. They'll manage. He paused. I'm the one asking you to stay. She stared at him. Not because you can fix ledgers. Not because you caught a saboteur. And certainly not because 6 grown men need mothering. A laugh escaped her. Then why? Because this place is better when you're in it. His voice softened. And so am I. Temperance looked toward the wagon, then toward the ranch house. Finally, she closed her fingers around its key. I suppose Calder will be annoyed. Why? He repaired that wagon for nothing. From somewhere behind the barn came Calder's voice. I heard that. Temperance burst out laughing. 1 year later, the clock downstairs reached 2:17. The ranch house was dark. No lanterns burned. No exhausted brothers guarded windows. Wiley had married and built nearby. Ansel managed expanding accounts. Tolliver oversaw horses. Jory had started a transport business. Calder operated the ranch workshop. Wood had become one of Ephraim's most dependable foremen. And upstairs, Ephraim slept beside his wife. Temperance bell roared. Then came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Temperance opened her eyes. That sounds familiar. Ephraim groaned. Ignore it. You didn't ignore mine. That was my first mistake. She elbowed him. He laughed and climbed from bed. Together they opened the front door. A stranded traveler stood outside beside a damaged wagon. My axle broke. Temperance and Ephraim exchanged a look. Then she opened the door wider. Come inside. Warm light spilled across the porch. Upstairs, 6 rooms remained peaceful. The house no longer lived in fear of every sound after midnight. A year earlier, Temperance had arrived needing shelter. Now she stood inside the same doorway offering it. And perhaps that was what she'd truly brought to Rourke Ranch. Not cooking, not housekeeping, not some miracle cure for 6 exhausted men. She had brought back the one thing fear had stolen from them. The certainty that when they closed their eyes at night, someone else could carry the watch. For the first time in years, the Rourkes understood that home wasn't the place where nothing bad could happen. Home was the place where nobody had to face it alone.